Welcome to Policing TV, the second part of a conversation with Assistant Chief Constable Chris Davison of Lincolnshire Police. Chris, thank you so much again for inviting Policing TV here. We're in the Force firearms range, are we not?
Yes, that's right.
We're here in part because we're going to be talking about collaboration here. So much of what policing does is not just the force operating in isolation. It's about collaboration with others. And we're going to cover in this conversation three acronyms, which I'm hoping you'll explain. EMSU.
EMSU, which is East Midlands Special Operations Unit.
EMOPS.
Yeah, EMOPS was our operational support collaboration.
And G4S, which I think stands for nothing more than G4S.
I think you're right.
The company. So we're starting with EMSU. Tell us about EMSU.
So EMSU is a collaboration between the five forces of the East Midlands. So that's ourselves, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Leicestershire and Northamptonshire. We collaborate on a range of functions, but EMSU really looks after major crime, which is the investigation of homicide primarily, and serious and organised crime, so top tier kind of serious and organised threats to the region.
And a force the size of Lincolnshire is one of the smaller forces in England and Wales in the United Kingdom. These sorts of collaborations are important, indeed vital to you?
Yeah, in terms of maintaining our kind of capability and capacity to deal with those kind of threats, the investigation of murders, which colleagues will know can be incredibly resource intensive, but also really important that we get right. And again, for the tackling of serious and organised crime, there's a lot of specialist capability that's required in order for us to be able to deliver for the people of the county. Essentially, this collaboration is the best way in which we kind of brigade that expertise and bring it to bear on the county, because otherwise, being the size that we are, we might find it quite difficult to provide all of that in-house. And we get the benefit of other forces expertise and all the forces officers coming in to assist when that's required.
And Lincolnshire you describe as a smaller force, but actually geographically you're I don't know whether you're the largest force of those five, but you are a pretty large force geographically.
Yeah, we are. We cover about 2,286, I think, square miles. I think that makes us the second largest policing area outside of Police Scotland, of course. And unlike some other kind of large English geographical areas, we've got towns dotted throughout the entirety of the county. So there are no huge kind of national parks here where we've got towns, market towns, all the way through. So a requirement to make sure that our resource is available, all across that spread too, which is occasionally a bit of a challenge, to be fair. We have 1,186 police officers covering that area, and we need to make sure that we get the geographical spread exactly right.
Well, before we move on to EMOPS, let's just explain why we're here in the force range. And the reason behind that is that there was a time when the force collaborated on firearms training, but now this is the range that firearms officers in Lincolnshire will come and receive their training in. The force has also, I believe, collaborated on public order, it's sort of related areas. So there have been periods of greater collaboration and less collaboration on the EMSU. It's very much a tight collaboration that's been going on some time, but on things like firearms, at the moment, Lincolnshire goes its own way.
Yeah, that's right. The EMOPS collaboration, I think, was really difficult to put together and provided that service across the East Midlands. But of course, to some extent, that service is much more geography dependent. And when it comes to the East Midlands, of course, Lincolnshire being so large does often find itself a bit of an outlier in terms of not only where it's located, but actually how vast it is. So I think there's some lessons to learn for us. We really grateful to colleagues from the East Midlands region who helped put that collaboration together. I think we learned an immense amount as a sole force, and some of which we've brought back with us. But of course, one of the things people have to consider around collaborations is the cost of disaggregation. What does it look like to bring back to a sole force if that's the direction of travel? And I think that it's something that chief officer teams will be considering very carefully. My hope would be that collaborations where they make sense will continue, but if not, not to underestimate how difficult some of that disaggregation can be.
So remind us what EMOP stands for again.
Yeah, so it was the East Midlands Operational Support. I forget the second S as it goes, so I'm not doing very well, but it was around the operational support side of the house. So it was our ARVs, our armed response vehicles and our public order and things of that nature.
Yes. Now, on G4S, the collaboration there was very much focused on police staff, so not the warrants card carrying police officer, but rather police staff. And that, in summary, almost every member of police staff, probably 15 years ago or thereabouts, I would think, was transferred over to G4S in what I think was called a TUPE procedure. And so Lincolnshire was pretty unique, I think genuinely unique, in having police officers with one employer and police staff largely with a second employer. Now, that was unwound, I think, roughly 5 years or so ago, that sort of order. Tell us about the experience that Lincolnshire had and the learning that came from that journey.
Yeah, so we actually took back a lot of that stuff only a couple of years ago, perhaps slightly less as it goes. And we'd seen a whole 10-year contract. And it's really important to say that when we took, or the police authority, as was then, it was that long ago, took the contract out. It was primarily a view around how we could save money. So there was a whole
Lincolnshire Police was in a very, very difficult financial position.
Yeah, we found ourselves in a really tricky position because of the funding, and I won't go over that too much. But also because we wanted to learn and to adapt some of the working practices from the private sector. So, you're absolutely right. The scope and scale of what we dealt with the private sector partner with is unprecedented, certainly in UK policing. So in 10 years, what did we find? Well, it's a much more complex picture than people might appreciate. So there's a whole range of emotions for staff as they were tupied across to Lincolnshire Police. Some people have been Lincolnshire Police before and were really pleased to be coming back to Lincolnshire Police because of the brand and what that represented. But of course, really importantly, there were a lot of people who joined on G4S who were very proud of their service and their work with G4S, and rightly so, because there was a lot of really good work done. And so when it came to communications and making sure that people had a soft landing, it's a really complex and tricky piece of work. I think what we've really found is that the disaggregation part, again, is a lot of work, a lot of planning. There were some exceptional people helping us with that. A local firm really helped with that too. But I think what we've really found is that the processes and the structures are all fairly simple to work out. What's more difficult to work out, of course, are people's motivations, the cultures at play, and how people relate to their work. And actually, where you've had 10 years of working for one provider and then come to a different public sector provider, particularly if you haven't worked for the public sector before, that can be enormously unsettling. But it's also unsettling to some extent for the receiving organisation, because what you think you're inheriting might be something completely different. It might be exactly what it says process and structure-wise on paper, but actually in terms of the culture and the expectations of management that you get, you might find yourself in a very different place.
Well, you talk about culture. Of course, just a couple of months ago, we recorded something in your office, learning more about your leading initially for Lincolnshire Police and more recently for the National Police Chiefs Council, work on culture. So that very much ties in with that. We won't revisit that. Those interested can go to those particular videos, but there is a link in with that other aspect of work that you have.
Absolutely. I genuinely think that anybody leading in today's police service must have culture as one of their primary issues on the agenda. You can ignore it, but my guess is if you ignore it at your peril.
Chris, so Assistant Chief Constable Chris Davison, for the time being in this second video, thank you so much. We're going to move on to talking more about Lincolnshire Police, I think on the next video with a drone in the background.
Thank you.